What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one-armed madman. And with me today, once again, we've got the great Michael Strom. What's up, brother? How we doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. Just, life in general, just trying to keep up with it, man.
Oh, I hear you, dude. I hear you. I just got off of workers' comp recently, graduated college, and now it's like, got to pay the bills. So I'm starting out, getting a new hustle together. I'm going flowers. I've got a nice big backyard and a big garden. We've got a bunch of really nice rose bushes around here in my yard that were, like, one of them is massive. It's been here for probably 20 years since the house was built.
Wow.
And then we've got some other nice ones that I've got around, and then my mother's got a bunch of nice ones. And I live on a half acre, so I've got a decent size, a pretty good size garden that I just expanded this year. So I've been practicing taking clippings and getting stuff to grow. I have not succeeded yet, but I'm probably watched 5 hours of YouTube videos, so I think I'm going to nail it at some point.
Yeah, right. Get the practice in. Get that. I've never done it at all, so you're way ahead of me. I've always wanted to. Of course, I always wanted to do it just for cannabis, if nothing else.
I used to grow weeds. That's how I know how to work with plants. They're essentially every flowering plant is the same, so you can use the same, fertilizers. There's better fertilizers for that, but I live in here in Idaho. I grew one year, so it was during COVID. I grew the year before just a couple plants in pots, and they turned out really good. I got a couple ounces or something like that. Got away with it. So the next year, I put in like one of those big flower pits. It's a wooden thing. It's about the size of this table. And I had
a little box.
Yeah, exactly. So and then I bought just 4 little clones from the weed store in Oregon, which is just up the way. And I had them started out, and I had a guy set up to come and extend my 3-foot fence to a 6.5, 7-foot fence. And he's supposed to be there in a couple days. These things are only like this big. So, I'm not worried about it. They're like, I think I measured it out at like 40 or 50 yards from the road. So, unless you're looking in my backyard with binoculars or you know what you're looking for, you're not really going to see what's happening. So then the guy goes, "Oh, I got COVID," and then somebody else got COVID, and pretty soon it's going down the line, and they're like this big. And I go, I'll give it a couple more weeks. I'll give it like 2 more weeks. I was standing out on the road. I can't really see them. It's June, July maybe. So they're not going to smell for another couple months. And I shit you not, a few days later, got raided, whole SWAT team. I mean, I guess I wouldn't call it a SWAT team, but whatever their, stormtrooper squad is up here, probably 10, 15 guys. They yanked me out. They yanked my tenants out. They had us handcuffed. They didn't handcuff me, thankfully, because the last time I got arrested, they handcuffed me. They put one around this wrist and then one here and then whipped me around the back. And again, that was for like 2 grams of weed, which was crazy. But
holy crap.
Yeah, anyways. They search, they turn up my entire house, go through everything. They're like hammering me. "Where's your baggies? Where's your scales?" And I'm like, "Dude, does it look like I use baggies? Like, what are you fucking talking about? I'm not a baggie guy. I'm a Tupperware guy." And all my weed in the house was from the store. And I had like 1.5 grams. I'm like, where is this weed that I'm supposedly selling? So I basically just, after they like put us into the backyard, one of my tenants is sitting there, and I'm just hammering these guys, the cops. They're and I'm like, "Why don't you guys want it to be legal?" And I'm just hammering them. And my tenants over there just like snickering the entire time. And finally the detective, plainclothes detective, comes over and he goes, "All right, here's your ticket," or whatever it is. I got like cultivation, there was a couple other things, possession, but cultivation was the big one. I'm in Idaho, so cultivation's a big deal. It's like a year minimum here. And they go, "What? But since it's COVID, we're not going to take you to jail. We'll just let you stay here, and we'll come back. You'll get a notice or whatever." I go and I spent thousands of dollars on a lawyer. The lawyer that I had just won a case here in Idaho where these guys got pulled over with a bunch of weed on them. The cops took him in. They destroyed the weed without testing it. And the lawyer comes in and goes, "Oh, that was CBD. They were taking it, to this shop to be turned into CBD oil. You guys fucked up." So the guys got off. It was very embarrassing for the state. And the guy, I got that guy. He made some calls. Never heard anything from him again.
No, that was it, huh?
Yeah, that was it. So not a terrible end to a bad story.
No, there's a lot more stories like that end a lot worse, for sure. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of people, our prisons are full of people with similar stories, something not unlike that little story right there. And for some reason, the color of their skin, perhaps, or perhaps the neighborhood they live in, has contributed to the fact that they're now locked up for yet another victimless crime.
Yeah.
Go figure, huh?
Yeah, I mean, even where I'm from in Northern California, we're from weed territory. In the early 2000s, late 90s, man, people were going to prison, losing families, And I give the cops a lot of shit up there for that. I know some of them who are retired now and who had, knew it was going to be legal, knew what they were doing was wrong, essentially, and still chose that path to go and knock down the doors of your neighbors, rip them away from their kids, and throw them in a cage.
And look for any reason, anything they can to justify it too. Well, it's not legal yet, or it's not legal here, or
I'm just doing my
whatever
job.
their excuse is. It's kind of funny. My daughter, she's in high school, and she was just telling me the other day they're in debate class, and they don't get to choose the things they debate or the side they debate on. It's just kind of handed out. But I guess they did Christopher Columbus the other day, and it's defend Columbus as an imperialist or as not. He wasn't, and the side that was sort of pro Columbus was just trying to say, well, he didn't start out that way. He didn't set out with the intent to do these things. One, you don't know that that's not true. Two, you're working for the state. You're setting out there with his own notes expressly stating that he's going to conquer these people, and he's bringing these people back and presenting them as ignorant servants, perfect for the crown, that type of thing. And it just amazed me that what they were attempting to do was to suggest that his intent was what mattered, not that what he did. It's the same with these cops. Their intention is to enforce the law, to do good things, and to serve and protect. But the reality is that's not what they do. They've never done that. They're nothing more than tools for revenue generation, and they would use whatever excuse they can to justify their own actions when they know that it's that guy that gets really pissed off when he knows that he was the one that was wrong. You know that guy?
Oh yeah.
There's always that guy that you've caught him. You caught him in the lie. You caught him in whatever it is that he's done wrong. And instead of admitting it, he gets mad. And he gets mad at you, and he blames you, and he starts to gaslight you, and he says it's your fault. That's what it is. So the cops, that's their entire story at this point, is they just get to gaslight us.
Yeah.
They just gaslight. No. You're the ones that are doing something wrong. You're the one that's crazy. The laws are here. They're spelled out for you. And they're not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I just sailed over there to spread the Lord and improve trade. It's not my fault that they were backward savages and needed to be beat and
I had
taught the ways of the white man. What would you do? It's not my fault.
Yeah, it's a weird way to justify the ends by going back and just skipping over everything, all the means, and going back. And I said the same. I said this to my daughter. Politicians. That's what politicians do.
Yeah.
They're this person. It's in writing, it's in person. They've said this, and then it comes time for election, and now all of a sudden they say this, and they write this, and they say this, and there's nothing. I would say nothing that they do or say now that isn't a contradiction of something that they said in the past in some place or some time, if for no other reason to get the votes.
Yeah. Take Hawaii, for instance, right now, what's going on over there
Mm-hmm.
right away. Climate change.
Yeah.
Don't look at our policies. Don't look at the people in charge that we're talking about water equity and haven't replaced all the wooden poles and haven't trimmed all the trees and, turn the water off. Don't look at that.
No,
Look at the big bad climate change, or even better, look at the space lasers. Of course, it must have been space
I had to get
lasers.
there. Yeah, the DEWs. Look, guys. Okay, DEWs exist. They could be used as weapons, but that's the end of it. At that point, so what I've been asking people for the last 2 weeks since this whole thing come out, and everybody's running around talking about DEWs, what are you going to do about it? What if you're right? Just exactly what does it solve? Does it really fix anything? And the people who use this approach, they have this particular worldview. It's a particular mindset that everything, every time, has to be a certain way. That there's no. I saw what happened, and I pulled up a little bit of information, and I went and looked, and for decades, the place has been in turmoil in terms of people managing the entirety of the properties and everything in and around there, because they have this perfect storm of socialist BS where they can't can't build new buildings in certain places, can't upgrade stuff, can't let God forbid you do a controlled burn and actually burn out some of the undergrowth. Oh, don't mention the fact that we've imported all these different grasses from all over the place, and we planted them in our yards and stuff, and that they're not native grasses, and they're not used to a drought that everybody's going through, or just the high temperatures and the fact that everything's dried out and you've got all this underbrush. The same thing happens in California, happens in Colorado, happens in Oregon, all these places where there's forest, where these wooded areas, particularly if there's a leftist, socialist, more socialist government than normal. They put in all these restrictions and controls, and it's just this perfect storm for letting large fires get out of control. And that's not even talking about like the causes or the potential problems with the infrastructure itself causing a fire, which is what's presumed to have happened in this case and in multiple cases over the last decade or so. Big, huge fires caused by ultimately the infrastructure.
Yeah, you nailed it there, man. I lived in Lahaina for a year. My family still lives there right now. And absolutely true. Lahaina is a terraformed strip on the coast on the side of a mountain that is essentially a desert. It's dry. Everything about it is dry. And same thing, my mother's house burned down as well. My aunt's house burned down here in Lahaina just just last week. My mother's house burned down in California a couple of years ago. Same story. Power lines, brush hasn't been trimmed. And here's the problem. My grandfather was a logger for 10, 15 years, and his job was to cut in fire road. That's all he did all day was cut in fire road on a cat. But all of a sudden, loggers were evil. We got to take the land back from these evil loggers who are destroying the planet. And we need the government to come in and take stewardship of the land. And what does the government do? They just let it sit there. They don't take care of it. They don't manage it. They don't trim any of the underbrush. They're not cutting in fire road. They just let it sit there. Give it back to the free market. I've said before that loggers at this day and age are far more responsible than the government. They know how to rotate trees now. We get it. They made one of the biggest mistakes anybody has ever made in this country, cutting down the redwoods 100 years ago. They get that. Like, they're not going to make that mistake again. I would even contend that if you gave over Yosemite National Park right now to a private company, they would make it a far nicer park. There would be nicer places. It would be a lot easier to move through. Everything would be taken care of. They're not going to just turn it into, they're not going to just go and rape the land. They know that there's more profit in bringing people in to see it than just destroying it.
Well, that's the key, right? Is that there's a profit motive, and that's the misunderstanding about the difference between what the free market can do with something and what government can do with anything. The roads are such a good example of this, because everybody talks about the roads, how important the roads are, and the roads this, and roads that. and they're always a perfect like right now is a perfect time to point at the roads and go, do you not understand right now? Do you see that our infrastructure, these bridges are collapsing, they're dropping pieces of concrete off onto passing cars and shit, and the roads are just nothing but just pothole after pothole and crack, and the people are falling through, the cars are driving into holes that just appear in the middle. I do you understand why that happens? Because at the time that they built the roads, it was a boondoggle. It was we can make it look like people are working. We can make it look like it's important work. But here's the problem with that. It's a one-time investment on something that's supposed to be ongoing. And so there's no money in it anymore. There's no votes in it. There's no money in fixing the roads, so the roads don't get fixed. So we have what we have here right now. Well, exactly what's it's just Topeka. I live in Topeka, Kansas, and Topeka, Kansas is a shithole.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. That's the bottom line. It's completely socialist, leftist, out of control nonsense throughout the entirety of the state. But Topeka is just as bad. And the roads are just a joke.
Yeah.
And people just still, they sit there and they talk about it. They still talk about it, and they're going to fix it. And we got to give them more money. We got to tax it. That's the only way we're going to fix it. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. That's the larger picture I see of everything right now.
Yeah.
They keep blowing smoke. The Fed was out there again today after. It's just, if anybody watched this shit, does anybody watch these guys from 1 week to the next go, oh, no, we're not going to raise rates, then raise the rates the next week. The next week say, oh, no, economy's fine. Everything's recovering. Inflation's decreasing. Everything's going to be perfectly fine. The very next week, oh, no. We see a long-term problem with inflation. It's just a bump like that. Who's paying attention to these clowns anymore when it's literally that? If you're just watching the headlines, you have no clue what the hell is going on. If you don't understand, you don't start looking around and try to figure out what it is they're doing and manipulate, you have no clue. You've got to be in just a constant state of confusion.
Yeah, they're completely talking out of both sides of their mouths.
Yeah.
And they're able to. I was talking with somebody, I read an article about this on Zero Hedge a couple weeks ago that I didn't completely understand. But essentially what they were saying is that these assholes learned from 2008 and they're able to do it better this time. And they're able to raise rates a lot more for us than for themselves. So they're able to, whatever they were doing with their loans previous to COVID, extended them for a period. So they are essentially able to operate as they were while we are, paying new prices for everything. They're still in on the old price scales. We're paying, inflated prices on everything. Yeah.
But that's the problem with long-term debt anyway. It's why it's always been considered a problem for society, just for the general good of society. In the Bible, it's the Jubilee, right? You have the Jubilee and you forgive all the debts, and because it resets society and nobody's beholden to anybody anymore. We have a interesting game that we're playing right now with people being broke and people chasing after money, and people trying to lend people money. Oh, I keep getting phone call after phone call. Oh yeah, you've been approved for this, you've been approved for that. Oh, we got your number from the credit bureau. You didn't. I don't have a job. I don't pay taxes. I don't hold any sort of credit cards or anything. You didn't get my number from anybody, from anybody official. You got my number off of some list somewhere. You paid some unscrupulous bastard, because you're an unscrupulous bastard, to acquire information about people that you shouldn't have, that don't want you to solicit crap to them, which is, that's government in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, dude, I got a settlement for workers' comp for my injury. And prior to that, I didn't have any money. I was getting workers' comp wages while I was going to school, learning about the enemy up close and personal, which was fascinating. And dude, it's wild. Right away, as soon as I got the settlement, I was just bombarded. Mail.
inundated.
Like I was hardly even getting mail before, dude. And just right away, mail, mail, mail. You want to refinance? Do you want to refinance? Do you want to take out a loan? We can sell you solar panels, solar heat pumps. Like everything just started coming in. It was
Amazing.
wild. I could not believe how quick the coordination was on all of it.
Mm.
And
And
I was talking with somebody the other day about like this is a problem with like I heard somebody talking the other day, oh, this is a problem with capitalism. Capitalism is like, no, dude, this is a function of freaking government. The
hmm
government is tied together on this shit. Think about this. Like, you can use EBT to go to any McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, KFC, and just jam the most unhealthy poison down your mouth on the government's dime. But every restaurant that I've worked at in the last 10, 15 years, you have never been able to do that. And why is that? Because these big government or these big corporations are close to the government. That's not a
hmm
function of capitalism. That's a function of government. That's fascism.
yeah. Yeah. Man, I don't know how many times that can be the explanation for something. Like I see people so often point to the market, but I tell you, I see hope. That's the neat thing. I see some interesting hope, and it's in. Well, okay, so maybe there's not because all right, so there's a bell curve. Everything's a bell
Yeah, yeah,
curve.
yeah.
Everything's a bell curve. It's about understanding. So you don't understand something you don't know exists. You find out it exists. You understand it more, and then it becomes easier and integrated. And yeah, that's a bell curve of everything. And we're when we're talking about the economy, when we're talking about the government itself and the actual politics and the elections, when we're talking about vaccines, when we're talking about education, they all follow literally the same bell curve. All of these people in these groups, you have smart people. The smartest of people won't get vaccinated. The dumbest of people won't get vaccinated. The smartest of people don't vote. The dumbest of people don't vote. The smartest of people understand what's going on. The dumbest of people either don't understand what's going on, so they're smart enough to stay the hell out of it, or they do, they get it. And that's what I started to say is that I see more and more of, I hate to say the dumbest half of, but
Yeah.
whatever.
No,
It's
I
the
get it.
people that aren't over here on this side of
The
the
midwits.
smart curve.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
midwits.
Most people are here. Some people are here. Some
Yeah.
people are here. And I'm talking
Yeah.
about the ones over here. They're not as smart.
But they're
Uh,
happy
but
typically.
but they're happy. They're often happy. That's absolutely true. They're often happy because I'm not talking about um, broke,
Yeah.
homeless people.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking
No,
about.
many of my
Uh,
friends fall in that category and are the happiest people I know.
yeah,
They couldn't
yeah, no,
they
absolutely right.
wouldn't like this conversation whatsoever. They would be more comfortable talking about football or something like that.
Yeah,
But they're very happy.
yes, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't like it when people have a problem with that. There's something else wrong there when people have a problem with what other people do with their time and who they are and who they want to be. Um, this it's just that notion that there's these people over here on this side that they see something that all of these people are distracted from, refuse to see, involved in politics, um, think they're smarter than they actually are. That's one of the things, that there's a whole bunch of people in here that think they're really smart, but
Yeah.
they're actually not. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I see them, these people on this side of that scale, just looking at it and going, yeah, this isn't working. I'm
Yeah.
not participating. I'm not playing. This is a scam. And so it's interesting. But what happens, of course, in the bigger middle. That's the people that we need to reach, and they're the hardest to reach. They're the thickest skulls.
Yeah.
They're the most narcissistic. They're the least intelligent. They actually belong way down here on this scale, but because of success and economics and numbers and other people around them, or maybe starting their own businesses or whatever, it's that whole middle class thing.
Yeah.
That middle class is the best and the worst of everything. And but are we reaching there? I don't know about that. I really don't know about that.
Here's a hopeful piece on that note. Did you listen to that new song Richmond North of Richmond?
I haven't. I did the thing with the previous song, and
The
I
previous
listened to
song
it.
sucked. Try that in a small town.
Yes, it's a terrible
That's
song.
that's written by. Here's my problem with that. That's
It's a
written.
committee thing.
That's written by a boardroom. Hey, how
Yep.
can we use January 6th to kind of get and he didn't write that song. He doesn't give a shit. And where the fuck were you 2.5 years ago when this shit was
When the song
actually
actually
going?
came out,
When
yeah.
when
Why
the,
did
when
it
the
take
event was happening? Where the fuck were you? No, this one's better. This is a single guy with a guitar in front of a camera. That's it.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's clearly like aimed at Washington D.C., Richmond North of Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, Richmond,
and in the
Virginia,
song,
yeah.
he says one of the lines in the song is your dollar's not worth shit, and it's in taxed to no end.
Mm.
So it's interesting. 18 million views in a week. It's going to overtake
That's
that other
crazy.
song in. I'd play it if I had my iPad hooked up right now, but I didn't hook it up like a dumbass. Anyways, but I think it's hopeful because of what the song. It's interesting. I think that music is probably the highest form of art because you have to distill an idea into something that is short and also concise, but it has to also sound good.
Yeah, it has to work. Yeah.
Like books are you could write a whole book that wouldn't hit as many people as a 3-minute song does, explaining essentially the same thing. So I found that to be a little bit hopeful. You'll have to give it a listen when we get done.
Yeah, no, I haven't listened to it because I'm avoiding it or anything like that. I just haven't made the move. I just get it.
You already get it. You don't
I
need
to hear the specific lyrics though to understand what message. And I've heard a little bit from other people that talked about maybe one of the last lines in the song was a bit inflammatory or something like that.
Well, yeah, he tears apart
division, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
He rips into welfare. He says that 300-pound people shouldn't get money for fucking chocolates.
That's what it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, so such a hard concept to understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Taxation is theft. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
What else has been on your radar lately?
Well, I mean, everything's on my radar. That's what's pretty funny about it. It's yesterday I was wandering around a pawn shop, and the guy asked me if I'm looking for something, and I said, man, I'm always looking for something, but no, I'm not looking for nothing. He said, I'm always paying attention, but I just don't care, and so I don't necessarily commit any of it to memory. I think I'm watching the fun of the elections right now.
Me too.
And watching the talking heads get up, all these old guys get up there and short circuit. This is fantastic.
Biden the other day was like, and then he corrected himself and he said the same fucking thing. It's just beautiful. I mean, it's crazy. I was telling somebody the other day, I can't wait for like 10 years from now when they're going to be like, hey, so what if John Fetterman's had half of his brain replaced by robotics? He's still human.
Yeah. See, that's a conversation we have to have, because I'm absolutely certain that we have to worry much more about rich, crazy people themselves, augmenting themselves, or augmenting their foot soldiers, more than we have to worry about actual robots, actual AI, whatever this nonsense is.
The first podcast I ever did was Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli. And he asked me that same he's like, "What do you think about robot dogs and, tanks on the field?" And I was like, "Dude, to be honest, I'm more worried about a fucking camera on the light post outside of my house. I'm more worried that and this was during COVID. I'm more worried that when I drive down the road and I get a speeding ticket from a robot camera, that
Mm,
people are just going to show up and go to court or whatever it does, that
yeah.
people are just going to bend over and take it and go, oh yeah, it's just a
No,
camera,
that's a
not a
good
big deal.
analogy of exactly what it is because it will become normalized. They'll just accept it because it's easier. That's the thing about it. You watch that particular process degrade entirely. The process of arresting someone actually used to begin with having a reason to arrest someone and having legal permission to arrest them. And then it sort of switched to, oh, well, we can get a warrant afterward. We can use the excuse that you might be dangerous now, or you might damage evidence or hide evidence or something like that. If we don't take you into custody now, we don't grab it so we can get the warrant afterward. Now it doesn't even matter. They will just send you a ticket in the mail and expect you to show up at court. Or if they pull you over on the road, I don't know if it's this way with you. I bet it is. I bet it is. You don't have to sign a ticket anymore.
No,
They don't even want you to sign a
no,
ticket
they don't give
anymore.
a
They just
shit.
write you the ticket and hand it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I asked last time I got pulled over for speeding, the cop was driving the other direction and he flipped a bitch on me. And
Mm,
he goes, you know how fast you're going? I go, I don't know, 45. And he goes, you were going 48 and it's a 35. And I go, well, how the fuck do you know I was going 48? You were driving the other direction. And as soon as I saw you turn around, I slowed down immediately.
mm,
And he goes, well, I can tell based on how much you slowed. I can just tell. And I'm like, so you
mm.
didn't take radar at all? He's like, no, I don't have to. And, I could have gone to court and argued with it, but I just finally was just like, you know what? I'm going to lose. Screw it. I'll just pay the
Yeah.
goddamn thing. And that
Yeah.
sucks.
And that's what happens. That's the normalization of it all. And that's what they've relied on for all these years. And that's how they've gotten to the place where they are, where they're killing 3 people a day easily across the nation, when what they're supposed to be doing is protecting people and property, supposedly.
Yeah. I
That was
mean,
what they sold the assholes as.
there was this fat guy who just got murdered by the FBI for ranting about, I think it was about Hillary Clinton or
Oh, you're
something like
talking
that.
about the dude that said something about Biden's coming to town,
Yes.
better get the
Yeah.
guns out or some shit like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, something
Fat,
stupid, but
fat
yeah,
disabled guy could barely get out the
yeah,
door. They freaking murdered him and then
murder
drug him
him.
out of the house on camera because, of course, they
Mm.
have to do it on camera now. If you're a high enough profile, they'll even call CNN. If you're Roger Stone, you get CNN with your freaking arrest. That's beautiful when they do that.
One of my favorite things now, I can't watch these videos. I used to do. I used to write for Cop Block, and that was one of the things I was supposed to do. Is I'm just supposed to watch these videos of these fucking pigs abusing people, and I
Oh,
just hate it.
God, that's horrible for
It
your soul.
Yeah. Oh, it's bad for your soul. It's bad for your brain. And it's bad for me because I want to go out and smash a fucking bully in the face, whether he's wearing a badge or not. It just makes me so angry the way they hurt these people and the excuses that they use. And the thing that just it's become a huge, as much as I fear for my life or any of that stuff has become a tool that they use. One of the biggest tools they use now is the stay with me, buddy, keep breathing, when he's clearly fucking dead
Yeah.
and been dead for 10 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
He hasn't moved an inch and you're still there pretending like you've called or given a flying fuck about this guy you just fucking killed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude. The most disturbing part of the George Floyd video for me was that
Mm.
people just stood there.
Hmm.
Nobody decided, I'm just going to tackle this guy off of him. Like, I might get
Yeah.
my ass kicked too, and maybe they'll kill me. But, I just couldn't believe. And I would like to think that if I was there, I would have just gave him a kick off, just pushed him off with my leg or something, hands up behind my head, just give him a kick and just, what I mean? But I just couldn't
I
believe that
know
people just stood by and watched it happen.
I absolutely know that if that was just another man on him, I can absolutely say for certain that I would have done something about it.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, to see sort of a gang of people beating up on this one guy, let's take the badges away, and that's what they were, just a gang of
Yeah.
people beating up on this guy. And but here's the thing: I'm going to give you a cautionary tale, because this shit is. I'm still not done with this. This is still. Um, it's still hard to talk about. It still pisses me off. Johnny Hurley, a good friend of mine, was murdered a little while ago by cops after stopping a mass shooter.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's why I recognize that name.
yeah, John, yeah, I'm sure you know the name. Yeah, yeah, it's
He
been a
was
big
in the
thing
news.
with that.
He must have been in the news. I thought
Yeah,
I
yeah. No,
recognized the name, and then when
it's
you said
all
it
in
was
our
your friend, I
circles.
was like, maybe I don't know who you're talking about. I do
Yeah, no,
recognize the name.
he's that whole story is running all through our circles. Yeah, there's many people running our circles who knew Johnny. Johnny was just a great guy. And um I have, I carry everywhere. I never am out of reach of a pistol. It's always in my pocket. Um I can't say I would ever. Yeah, nice. Oh, I like that. I can't say as I would ever. Somebody's robbing a store or something, unless they stuck the pistol in my face, unless they're
Yeah.
threatening me or mine. I'm not getting involved. I just, I, there's almost, I get it. I get why people don't get involved. There's no value in it. Everybody sues everybody, and against a cop. I mean, I, they they never pay for their mistakes.
Yeah.
They
No, they
I
don't.
don't know how many times they violate someone before it eventually catches up with them, and most of them never. And so, I if I saw a cop being beaten down, I wouldn't help him any more than I would help a cop helps subdue somebody who was a criminal who wasn't violating me. Because first of all, if the cops are claiming somebody is a criminal, I have to question whether or not it's true, whether or not they're an actual criminal or not, because the police violate people for whatever reason they want, and they certainly do it over victimless crimes. So if I'm going to assist uh, my community, and it happens to be a cop that I was assisting, uh, is that guy really guilty of a crime? I'd have to consider that. And frankly, as far as ever helping a cop that was in trouble, I wouldn't piss on one if he were on fire.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I've got so many friends that have been tossed in prison for, victimless crimes
Mm.
that I could never do that. Yeah, it's tough.
You're
It's
just
tough.
setting yourself up, man. For what?
Yeah.
For me, maybe you feel good about it, but how good does it feel if you're dead? If you get killed or you get locked up in a cage and you can't go home to your family that night?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
And they will do it. I get
Yeah.
nervous about it here, man. I had a guy a couple years ago. There was a dude I'm out mowing my lawn. It's probably like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, summertime. So it's still bright out here in Idaho. And I see this guy walking back into my neighbor's driveway. He got a long driveway, big house, really nice place. And I see him walk back out and I go, maybe it's one of their nieces or one of their nephews, because I knew they had family in town at one point. And then I watch him walk out and then walk just out and start leaving and walking by my house. And I go, oh, man, this guy's a freaking loser. So I'm kind of eyeing him. And I see him turn and go down into my neighborhood. And I go, oh shit, this isn't freaking good. So I flip a bit on my tractor and I head back over to the other side of the yard where I had the 3-foot fence still. And I go, hey man, what the fuck were you doing in my neighbor's house? He was like, oh, I'm just out here looking for a place to live. I'm like, no, you're not. Get the fuck out of my neighborhood. And we kind of traded words a little bit. And he kept walking into the neighborhood. And I'm like, son of a bitch. Do I call the cops on this or what? And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to waste my time. They're not even going to get here in time. Like by the time they would even get here, he's going to be gone. I'm going to have to have them here at my house. So I decided, screw it. I just go grab my fucking Glock, keep mowing the lawn. So I see him walking back out of my neighborhood. And he starts walking over towards my fence diagonal. And I go, son of a bitch. So I go and, got my fucking gun and I head out into the driveway and I go, Jesus Christ, this guy's walking into my driveway. And at this point, I'm fucking nervous for a couple of reasons. Like, what is this guy going to do? And then what's going to, like, what are the laws here? Is my driveway, like, can I shoot this guy in my driveway or am I going to go to prison? All this shit's going through my head. And the guy just comes up to me and goes, hey, homie, we got off on the wrong foot. And I was just like, no, we didn't, dude. Get the fuck out of my house. But I was still nervous about it. I was like, this freaking, crackhead could literally call the cops and probably get me in some trouble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, if you were to harm him, even though he's the one that's wandering around, basically casing places and, looking for victims and looking for shit to steal, probably. You're the one that's going to get in trouble for it. And that happens to 100,000 people a year who own a gun. 100,000 or more charged under some bullshit law, some local ordinance or something like that, where they're just trying to protect themselves or their property from somebody who's clearly trying to violate them.
Yeah, unless your name's Hunter Biden, then you can do whatever the fuck you
Well,
want.
then
when
you
you've
do
got
whatever
a
the
gun.
hell you want.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously our betters should be able to have guns, and I mean, there are betters, so they should be able to decide what is safe and what isn't,
and use them in ways that we can't.
Yeah,
obviously, it's not just that. That's the bitch of it, right? Because we have permission to own guns, but you can't use one.
I even get worried about like saying like smoking weed on a podcast with a gun.
Oh, right.
I go, is somebody gonna, if I do something someday, is somebody gonna go all the way back and find me doing that and say, oh, he lied on a gun application?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past him for guys like us, but if you're an upper class, if you went to Yale or you went to Harvard, even if you live in New York City and you're one of those guys, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, well, I guess some of that comes with having money to be able to buy the legal system. But I think the bigger problem with that is that we're expected to rely on a system that has shown itself repeatedly, time and time again, to not be capable of defending us as individuals. This is that question of there's of justice. There's no justice unless it's acted upon at the time. The only way that you can stop yourself from being violated and stop other people from being violated is to do it at the time. To have a firearm, to have the greater force, to defend yourself and to stop the person from violating you. And we're not supposed to be able to, we're not to do that. We can't do that. It is against the law for us to defend ourselves. We have the right to carry a gun in this nation, a legal and moral recognized right, but we do not have the right to use it.
Yeah. And talking about rights, dude, while I was in school, one of the last classes that I took was a college class. It was one of the hardest classes I took. And we had to read ancient Greek plays. And you would be amazed about how many people do not understand what rights are. Rights are given by the government. They're not granted by God. What are you talking about? They don't come from our humanity. No, the government gives us the right to do this or the right to do that. You would be amazed of some of the arguments I heard in defense of government officials in this play. And then once you get further down the line and realize that this guy was just a dirtbag, then it's like, oh, well, obviously we should have stopped him. But, we didn't know at the time. We had to trust the system.
Yeah. Well, it's too late because that's part of this whole tipping scale thing that I kind of hinted at earlier in our elections, where it's just this seesaw back and forth for the sake of the argument that this is a democracy.
Yeah.
Nobody, it's like nobody's paying attention to what the hell these people are doing, regardless of what side they're on. How many times do you have to tell someone that it doesn't make a goddamn bit of difference whether it's a Republican or a Democrat when they all use the same policies? None of the policies change. You want to fix the economy? It's not going to be fixed by electing a Republican over a Democrat or a Democrat over a Republican if you believe in fucking socialism. It's not going to be fixed because they all follow the same policies. None of the core policies of the state, of government, of the system ever changes. That's why it continues to get worse. That's why they continue to to try to centralize more and more of their power and protect themselves up, building up an apparatus around them that protects them. It protects them in their jobs. It keeps them getting votes by paying off a certain subset of society to pretend that it's better than the rest of us, to act against us in an immoral fashion, made moral by pieces of paper claiming to be law. And then by also manipulating that law itself by creating by using the problems of a small number of people and conflating that into a larger uh, problem for everybody else by creating a law or some mandate that makes it illegal or charges a fee for you to be able to do something. So that again, they're just lining their pockets and keeping themselves in money. And the people that do all that work to collect all those fees, to enforce all those laws, to do it, it's just this huge circular joke. And it doesn't matter if it's left or right. And as soon as people get that, they're gonna we're going to have a revolution in this country.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be a bloodless one, but it's
Yeah.
going to be a revolution. It's
I
going to be a
sure hope
huge
it's
change.
bloodless, but there has to be huge change. It's great. Like the whole game is just keep the machine running and fire each other up. Oh, let's bring in race. Let's bring in gender. Let's bring in equity. Let's talk about how we need to let's pit everybody against each other. You know, back during Occupy Wall Street, there was a massive populist revolution. You had these Wall Street guys, you had the Tea Party, and all of them were saying the same thing. Enough of this bullshit. And then right away, you can even look up like into the New York Times, Washington Post, terms like equity and
Mm.
gender and non-binary and trans. All of these things just went like crazy because they said, hey, look, we got to do something because we got guns at the gates right now. They're worried about ending up on pikes. And something as easy as gender or race was able to just get us rabid at each other. It's really kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it just shows that they've been at it for a long time.
They're good at what they
That
do.
they make mistakes because it's so big and it's so hard to control, and that they just can't plan for every contingency, especially in a so-called free society. But they they learn real quick from those mistakes, and they learn how to manipulate the next phase. We're it's a real dangerous situation right now. It's probably as dangerous as it's ever been. Certainly to be an American, and it all trickles down from there. Everywhere else, everything's built on the dollar. Everything's built up on American might. There's not much of the even all of this China bullshit over the last 20 years has been hollow. When I was talking about them, sort of works projects. Remember, the depression came along in this nation, and then we had all these public works projects, and that's why we have all these decaying bridges and things
Yeah.
now, because at the
Mm.
time it was a boondoggle. They could do
Yep.
it. Boom, yeah, okay, boom, boom, boom. We build roads all across the nation, everywhere, and
Yep.
bridges and all this shit. And they did all that, and now they've slowly crippled it. We're on the downside of that
Yeah.
bell curve. We didn't have any, and then we had some, and we were used to them. They're ubiquitous, and now they're falling apart
Yeah.
again on the bell curve. And it's this we're going to continue down this same path where everything is just deteriorating. This
Yeah.
this balance of this back and forth game will only go for so long. So this dangerous period, and right now they're stretching out the damage that is being done to the economy. And they've been doing it. They've been doing it for a long, long time. And if you step back, there's a problem. I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this before. I've talked about this with some other people, but it's this micro versus the macro, and it's this looking at a very small section or subset of particularly economic data, but
Yeah.
climate data is another one
Yes.
that they do it to. Yeah, when you're talking about global warming and bullshit like that, they take very limited subsets of data and try to apply that across the larger scope, but it doesn't actually work. There's nothing to prove that what's happening here is also happening out here, and so they're able to manipulate this and drag this out for a really long time. But if you just step back, if you're just paying attention, you're not listening to their BS, and you're not watching, this week and this month or this year, and just the little ticks and maybe a little bit of down, and when you step back out here and you look at this and you look at years, and you look at decades, what you see is
Yeah.
a straight line down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is time.
All this bullshit don't mean nothing when this motherfucker is all the way straight down.
Yeah, and that's time preference theory.
Yeah.
Like Mises would call this time
Yes, that's
preference.
exactly.
If you've got
Thank you.
a higher or lower time preference,
Yeah.
you want to be looking in a long ways. And another thing that Mises talked about was the master builder analogy. So this is great with the roads. So imagine that you're a master builder and you get everything allocated for a job. Every piece of equipment, every worker that you need, and you make this beautiful building. But 90% of the way, you run out of materials. So not only is everything stalled and gone, but all of the work that you just did, and while you were working, it looked like the economy was booming. People are moving
Perfect.
around, stuff's getting built, things are
Mhm.
moving. But then you
Mhm.
run out of materials, and everything you did was for nothing.
Yeah.
And another
Well,
thing
that's
about
that's what's happened. Why China all of a sudden has popped back up in the news, and this is what I was talking about. That it's all a facade. It's all fake. All of this growth in China, this great socialist program, the socialist regime that's making it so great with just a little bit of capitalism thrown
yeah,
in there to make things work. It was all smoke and mirrors. It was all bullshit. They were building cities in the middle of fucking nowhere with
yep,
no people in them, and so now all of a sudden there's no money in building the roads. There's no money in building a fucking city that nobody lives in, and now their economy's gone to shit. Well, welcome to the fucking reality of economics. That's what happens when you do what you were just fucking describing.
yeah, and they're running out of people. The freaking
Yeah.
one-child policy. While I was in school, we had to do these questions, and there was one question that was like, the one-child policy in China was, a bad, whatever, but the answer was successful.
Mhm.
Successful. Killing millions and millions of little girls was successful. And now
Successful.
they're really, really hurting for that. It was the dumbest move they ever could have made. A lot of countries are hurting on this. We're hurting on this. We're below the
Yeah, we didn't
replacement rate.
kill ours off, but what we
That's
did
why we're
is we
bringing in
got
so many immigrants.
yeah. Well, that and what happens well, this, of course. What happens naturally in the economy is that as things get better, people get lax.
Yeah.
This is just what happens.
Yeah. It's a boom bust cycle. It was while I
and
was in.
there's a division. There's a point where it breaks off, and the amount. Trying to find a good way to say it. It's just this whole bigger economic picture that you're trying to step out and see. It's too much to try to take in. Most people can't even manage their own economy and manage the things, and then you start thinking about it in larger chunks, and But that should tell somebody right there why it's not going to work, why we can't continue to do things this way, why you can't continue to invest in projects, people, ideas that don't return anything. Government does that. Government is that. That's what government is at its core. It's an investment project that's never going to return anything. All those people are taking all the money, all the wealth, all the results of their great grand experiment in government and running the fuck away with it while the rest of us are out here going,
What the fuck?
what just happened?
Yeah. What the hell? Yeah, and
Uh,
dude, the roads are a great example. Like every freaking project on a highway. Where I grew up in Northern California, they were extending the freeway from for 3 lanes from Cloverdale all the way to San Rafael. Through the Navarro Narrows was the spot that really did.
yeah.
This was supposed to be a 5-year project. They started when I was like 5, 10 years old. They didn't finish it until I was in my 20s. And it cost like 5, 10 times as much as the original projections. This is how it always works. They bid in, these companies will bid low just to get the job, and then they'll drag it out and crank it up as much as they possibly can until they finally go to jail, which sometimes does happen,
Sometimes.
very rarely. But you know,
Yeah.
these
Depends on whose brother or
Yeah.
son or uncle
And, you
owned
know-
the frigging company.
And you know, the history of the highways, they sold it as, hey, we're going to put everybody to work. We're going to let you drive. We're going to connect everything so you can drive and see all the sights and experience America as it is. In reality, the entire interstate highway system was built to transport nuclear weapons. Have you ever noticed that every semi truck with a shipping container on it is like 3 or 4 feet underneath the bridge? It's because the bridge isn't designed for shipping containers. That's a whole different design. The bridge is designed for missiles to be able to go under it. And that also means that our highways are about 6 or 8 inches thicker than they need to be. So there's more materials wasted, more time, more money.
That was one of the major considerations of the highway system in America.
It was before they could move them around
troops and to move weapons.
It was before submarines, so they didn't have a way to move around nuclear weapons without being detected. So yeah, it was a war project, and then they went ahead and sent all the poor men off to war to fix the depression. You know?
Oh no! It was all the rich men's sons.
Burned food all over the country to keep prices up.
Oh my God!
It was a nightmare. These people are, and Roosevelt is lauded as a hero. You know,
yeah.
Trump, he's gonna he's gonna be a dictator forever. It's like, dude, Roosevelt did that.
You wish.
You know, your hero did that. It's wild, dude.
Well, and that's that tit for tat. That's that whole back and forth thing that it's so ridiculous. That's what I started to say when we started the conversation. You know, what am I watching? You know, what's on my radar? And I'm just watching this election. I do this every couple of years when they bring around one of these elections, one of these cycles. And I just sit back and I laugh because it's so funny to watch it. It's the slow train wreck, right?
What do you think about RFK Jr.? I think I like a lot of. What do you think about RFK Jr.?
Oh yeah, I think he's great. I think it's wonderful. I think that he's still a statist.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Gonna change.
The thing that I like about him is that he's going to be very good for Democrats. It's like a Democrat taking fucking niacin to flush their system from all this garbage.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know, it's like, here, hey, look, you can believe in Bitcoin. You can believe in freedom. You can believe in that your body is actually your own. You can believe in the free market. I don't, he's a Democrat and he's a statist. So, like, obviously, I'm not going to agree with everything that he says, but I love, like, I pay attention to left-wingers on YouTube. Jimmy Dore is a guy that I watch, and he's he's great on all the problems, but then it's like, here, let's give the government more power, and that'll make everything better.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're all
but
like
he's
that.
been
The
great
same
for
thing
Jimmy
with-
Dore. Like, Jimmy Dore has moved in the right direction on a lot of issues because of RFK Jr., and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, the political influence, the ideas, slipping into the discourse is fantastic. Unfortunately, it just continues to feed the the core problem, and that's that people have taken their responsibility and turned it into a once every 2 or 4 years process where they get their fat ass off the couch and they go claim that stuff will get done because they cast a vote. It's literally the least they could do to affect change
Yeah,
is voting. And unfortunately, the conversation around RFK is just that. It's
yeah,
just more
for
about
sure,
voting.
for sure. Yeah, I'm a little bit hopeful with the voting thing. Like my mom and her husband were big, Trump guys last election.
Mm.
They stood in line, they voted for Trump, and they were patriotic about it. And then the whole election went down, and they're just like, "This is a fucking joke. We'll vote locally, but we're never voting in a national election
Yeah,
again. This is
I'm not
bullshit."
one of those. I'm not an anarchist who's adamantly against the idea of voting necessarily. Um, it's obvious that statistically on the national scale, there's no point in
Yeah,
voting,
no.
but there absolutely can be a point in voting.
Yeah, locally,
Certainly,
like
defensively on a local scale, there's a
like
perfect example that
a
what's that?
sheriff is a good person.
Sheriff,
Like if
yeah,
you can
right,
get a
right.
good like libertarian in as a sheriff has a lot of power. There's a good sheriff down in Arizona who's done a lot of great things down there with like drugs and possession. They're essentially just letting people live their lives and not arresting people for nonviolent crimes. And if you can get somebody like that into your local area who can actually make a difference, there's legislation that you can just go like you can go onto Scott Horton or any of these guys' websites and they'll like lead you to legislation. Here, print this out and give this to your sheriff or give this to your local representative, and we can get, some of these things like you can get maybe concealed carry in your state. Like a lot of states, we have a constitutional carry here in Idaho, but when I moved here, you had to get a concealed carry permit. So that's something that like we've moved in the right direction on. We also just got rid of smog laws. They basically came
Oh,
out and
yeah,
said, "Look, we've got so many brand new vehicles on the road now that it doesn't make a difference. So we're just going to get rid of it." So it's good.
that's pretty
And
cool.
I have to give while I'm blowing Idaho right now, I do have to give them credit on our roads. When I moved here, our roads were like not in terrible shape, but poorly designed. Exits were poorly designed, on-ramps were poorly designed. We had four-way stop signs everywhere in the back roads like in my neighborhood and stuff, and they've ripped them all out and they put roundabouts in that are really nice
That's nice.
and like as
It's
far
great
as
when a
like my
community
tax
gets
money
it.
being wasted on shit, they're
Mm.
wasting it on decent shit here.
On the right shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best you can ever hope for
Yeah.
from yeah. And the only way you're ever going to affect that is voting
Yeah.
locally and
Yeah.
participating
And
locally in the system.
look, I'm all for local voting. I've never voted in my life. That started out just because I was a motocross racer and I didn't give a shit and I didn't,
Mm,
care. I was one of those
mm.
guys that just I'm just gonna pay attention to the races. I'm gonna live my life. I was partying, doing drugs and shit like that. I thought I was a George Bush Republican. Me and my buddy had a big George Bush thing in our house just because it pissed people off in Southern California. We didn't get it, Those
Yeah.
assholes tried to send me to fucking Iraq in a fighter jet. They
Yeah,
convinced me that I
right.
wanted to go fly in a fighter jet because I was good on a dirt bike. Oh yeah, you'll love it. Fuck you.
That was the logic, huh?
Yeah.
That's some amazing logic.
It's the only badder machine than a dirt bike that you can ever be on. It's the baddest machine you can. Oh yeah, you'll love it. They don't tell you that you're going to be like murdering children, 500,000 Iraqi children, and then you got Madeline Albright. Yeah, it was worth it.
It was worth it. They seem to say that a lot when they kill a lot of people, don't they? It was worth it.
At this point, what does it really matter?
Well, yeah, no, that's it. And
That's
what are
Hillary
you going to
Clinton.
do about it?
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's it. I think that has to be one of the approaches that we use to talk to people from now on. No more of this. Oh yeah, yeah. Truth is important, right? We got it. Truth is important, but truth is kind of, yeah. What good does it do us? What are you going to do about it? The information that you have the knowledge that you have, the tools that you've come to find useful in sorting out politics or sorting out information, being able to find your way through this morass of just ugh,
Yeah.
and come out the other side of it with some semblance of happiness and peace in your own life. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you that if you know about, you know for a fact 9/11 was an inside job, you know for a fact Maui was an inside job, you know for a fact Oklahoma, I don't know,
Waco,
pick a thing.
Ruby Ridge,
The Ruby Ridge, Ruby Ridge is an easy one. That one kind of
murdering
speaks for
children.
itself. But I just
Yeah,
any of
Waco.
these things that are really in question about who may have done them or why, what the motives might have been, because none of us were there. Well, that's the things that I like to concentrate on as a news person,
Yeah.
as somebody who's always tried to deliver the information and to put the truth out there as opposed to picking a side or deciding an issue for somebody. I want that, we're talking about the DWs and Maui and everything. I want the information. I want to know. I don't just want to know that a fire happened. I want to know why, if I want to know anything about it at all. Okay, DEWs. All right, well, why were DEWs used? Well, there's an argument that DEWs were used because there's all these rich people that bought up the land around there and they can't develop it because of all these different rules and laws in place. And all right, well, that's reasonable. But what about the conditions? What about the things that cause fires? What about all of the Occam's razor stuff? And so I go and I look and I say, oh, well, yeah, this is the same story that we've heard over and over again. Poor management, poor government choices, socialist decisions in managing property. And what you have is the perfect storm for a fire. Oh, well, what about that the picture with the cars in it, and the cars aren't anywhere near any trees? Really? Because all I see is a line of cars that are all really close to each other. I don't know what's over there,
Yeah.
or over there, 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 or over there. I only see what's right there. I have no
Yep.
idea. Okay, wait, it's probably some ocean right there. Got you. That one's covered. All right. Well, what the hell about the rest of
Yeah,
it?
they do a very
What's
good
over
job of
there?
not showing you the desert that goes all the way up to the fucking
Right.
top of the mountain.
Well, and then they're going to pretend like it wasn't windy
Yes.
and that embers don't blow around and cause sparks on things. And then they want to talk about dense areas like a park that doesn't catch on fire. The stuff in the park doesn't catch on fire. Well, it's watered regularly. That's what they do in parks. The trees are watered and they're wetter than everything else around them, and it's a fast-moving fire, so it burns the fuel that it can burn, and then it can't burn anything more. It's moved on, or there's nothing left there to burn. That's the way fucking fires work. It's so frustrating. And so, okay, so we know all of this. I have this scientific understanding of why fires happen and this political understanding of why they could happen, based on the failures of the socialist system that we live in and the manipulations of our environment overall. And then I have this understanding. Yeah, there's these technologies and there's crazy people and the thing that they do things that we may not understand why they've done it. I'm not a strict Occam's razor guy, but until you really show me the why, that's the mass shootings. They're coming for your guns. Really? Because every time there's a mass shooting, more people buy fucking guns. So they're doing a piss poor job of coming for the guns by committing mass shootings. Give me a fucking reason to believe that nonsense, or better than this, have that information in your head, understand that it's a possibility, move the fuck on, do something. Do something that you can do. Go, work on reaching people if that's what you're claiming you're trying to do. Oh, I'm trying to wake people up to DEWs, and they've got to know that they're out there. Why do they got to know that they're out there? Over, above any other weapon anywhere on the planet that they don't have in their own backyard and can't defend themselves with. What is the point? Give me a reason. Give me a reason to believe you. And by picking a side, choosing that this has to be it, that it's not, well, there's a possibility. Yeah, there's some information out there that says it could be this, these things happen. There's some more information over here that says it could be this, and these things happen. You don't know. You weren't there to make that decision, to claim that you know, to claim that that some other person that you got third party information from that wasn't there either knows, and now you're claiming you know because he claims he knows because it's something that he read or a picture that he saw that couldn't possibly be. Come on, man! Without an entire 360 view of this stuff that you weren't there for, why are you going to sit there and pretend that you know the answer when it doesn't matter? When there's so much else that you could be doing with your time, talking to people about real things that they can do in their own lives to make their lives better. Oh.
God damn,
Sorry,
Michael.
I had a rant.
That was an incredible rant. I was just at some point, I just had to sit back and went, I'm just gonna let this happen. That was incredible.
It's been grating on me a lot. It happens all the time. So okay, so here's what happens and why it happens. And unfortunately, I'm probably gonna have to get out of here pretty quick.
No, that's fine. We can end it whenever you want.
Cool.
I was just letting that rant go because you were just on
Yeah,
one. That
right.
was awesome.
No, years ago when I first got into this social media stuff and was trying to share information and find the right ideas, and I would do just what everybody else does. Oh, that's a cool meme. Click on share, send that shit. Don't really look over it. Check the quote, whatever it is. It only takes one time of somebody pointing out to me that I shared something that the fucking quote isn't by the guy that said it, or that isn't the quote, or that information isn't true, for me to go, wait a minute, I have to reevaluate the way I'm sharing information and the way people are seeing the information that I share. I better fucking understand it. And so one that got me was this goddamn Kennedy speech. And the thing about the turning over ending the silver-backed dollar for the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
One of his, I don't know, one of these. I'm trying to remember the number of it exactly because I'd like to think that I could get the thing nailed down perfectly, because there's this whole myth surrounding what happened with Kennedy and changing the silver-backed dollar and taking it out of print, and what it really is that there used to have to be some permission, some piece of paper that went through the White House first, and he got rid of that piece of paper. He got rid of that step. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And this has been used over and over again repeatedly to claim that he was assassinated by the banking cartel because he was messing with silverback dollars and playing, whatever the details were. I wish I could remember it all.
No, I've heard something about the story too. Like I feel like he might have wanted to go back on a gold standard.
It's not quite that.
Goal?
It's about the silver, and it's about putting control over that portion of printing money and supposedly putting it back in the hands of the Federal Reserve when it should have been in the hands of the budget office.
Okay.
And it's just not true. The whole thing, whatever it is, whatever that what he passed. I'm trying to remember the number. God, it's so frustrating. It's been so long that I've looked up any of this stuff. If we end up finding it before we wrap up, it'd be interesting to throw it up there, or maybe throw it up there at some point. But there's a couple of things. Okay, and so Kennedy gets assassinated, right? And so the claim is that the banks have done it because he's messing around with the money and he's taking control out of their hands. But he's not. He's actually put more control into their hands. If you go and read the actual what is the when the White House executive order, when he passes the executive order, it actually gave more power back into that same cartel. If you look at the names of the people who are involved and how they're tied to the banking cartel, it actually gave them more power. He didn't reduce their power at all. And so the argument is that he's going to expose this banking power, and he has this speech. You remember the speech, right?
Yeah.
the speech about there's a insidious something or other, blah blah blah. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it was
He's
the
talking
secret
about the Russian.
society's speech,
The
wasn't it?
secret society
Yeah.
speech, right?
Yeah.
That's the one. But he's talking about politics. He's not talking about money. He's not talking about the bankers. That's not what he's
Yeah.
talking about. And it's taken out of context. And it's said that he gave this speech, and that this speech was in a certain place at a certain time about a certain thing for a certain reason, and all four of those fucking things are wrong. They were all a fabrication of bits and pieces of truth pulled together by some right-wing fucking author, right-wing Christian author who wrote a book in 1985 and talked about this speech and about the reason that it was done. And ultimately, in the end, it's this JFK myth.
Yeah,
G.
there's
Edward
so much
Griffin.
surrounding him that
Yeah,
it's
yeah, a
hard to
lot
know
of
what's
stuff.
true.
Yeah,
It's hard to know what's
yeah.
true.
G. Edward Griffin years ago went through the details of it. He went through the executive order that was passed. He talked about how he wasn't taking any power out. He pointed to the guys that were in control at that time, and he said he just gave more power right over to those guys. This argument that these particular guys killed Kennedy is a very low ball, very specious argument. There's no real truth or proof of it. And I shared, a meme that had part of this quote, and that's the thing. Without taking all of that information and getting that 360 view, you can see the cars right in front of you that have been burned, but you have no idea what the rest is around you. Without that 360 view, you cannot make a claim about how those cars are burned or why those cars are burned. If you do, you're a fool. It's a very foolish thing to do, and that's. I just wish we could get some more people on that are on our side. I don't know, whatever the hell you call this thing, to just stop before they do stuff like that, because they're not doing any of us any favors. When the rest of us are out here just trying to provide good information and ideas to let people decide for themselves what to do with their lives and what they may do about things politically or socially, whatever, if they want to, when we have so many other people that are just pointing fingers and trying to find a place to point a blame and saying that pointing fingers and placing blame actually solves problems. It's the same stupid idea as thinking that voting solves problems.
All righty, Michael. On that, we'll get you out of here.
All right, brother.
Take care, brother. Everybody go check out Michael's podcast, Toward Anarchy. Michael's the man.